Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far and you're feeling great. I'm actually kind of off my schedule right now, my video schedule, but I'm trying to fix it. Anyway, if you are new here and you like true crime stories, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Also, some of my social medias will be linked down below in the description, so if you want, you can check it. Let's move to the video. Today's story will be about a very interesting character in true crime history who was actually making a revolution, or at least he thought so. As you may understand from the name of the video, this story will be about Theodore Kaczynski or Kaczynski. I guess I will call him Kaczynski. Hope I'm not messing it up. Let's start from the background of Ted. He was born in the family of ordinary workers from Poland. He had a brother, David, who will play a big role in this story, but we will get to it soon. His father was making sausages in Illinois, and his mother was fond of reading. She liked reading Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, and also liked to read for Ted. When he was a child, he was doing pretty well at school. He was very smart, and his IQ was more than 167, which is higher than the average that even scientists have. Ted had multiple hobbies and things that he was just good at. He was playing trombone, he liked biology. Also, he was the best in mathematics. There was one problem with him, however. He was very unresponsiveness and he had a sociality. He didn't have friends at school. His only friend was his brother. Ted's mother actually wanted to put him in school for autistic children that was at Chicago University, but later she decided not to do this as long as she didn't like how the professor who made these classes was communicating with children, and she just, decided that it would be best for Ted to stay at his regular school. In 1955, at the age of 16, Ted skipped the 11th grade and went straight to Harvard, which is just very, very cool. He was really smart. The friends of the family, on the contrary, were saying to them that it was a bad idea as long as he isn't mentally stable yet for the university and he needs to end school. But Ted's family decided that it is a very nice opportunity for Ted, and Ted thought so as well. In Harvard, Theodore was doing very well, but some of the professors mentioned that he was a pretty nice, brilliant student, but he was good only at mathematics, but in nothing else. During his Harvard years, Ted met a professor, Henry Murray, and it was the point that changed his whole entire future. Some words about Henry Murray. He was a psychologist and he had a very difficult and strong character, and he possessed a huge power at the university. The students that were taking part in his experiments were suffering mentally as long as Murray put them in self-doubt, and he was scaring them at the point that their mental condition reached the lowest level. During World War II, Murray was working at the strategy service, and he was dealing with making psychological portraits of workers, their qualities, their reaction on stress, are they able to lie, and so on and so on. Also, he wrote a report on the identity of Hitler. As it is stated, Kaczynski spent almost 200 hours in his experiments, and it lasted from 1959 to 1962. Murray himself called these experiments extremely violent and cruel. He was hurting students' egos and also criticized their ideas and beliefs. Murray had high hopes for his experiments. However, after the experiments ended, he didn't publish anything, and no one from his associates publish anything, and even his wife, when she was asked about it, she didn't tell anything. Some people, including Ted's brother David, noticed that probably these experiments were the reason why Ted later lost his faith in humanity and in people. One way or another, Ted had his bachelor degree at mathematics at Harvard University. After Harvard, Ted decided to get his master and doctor's degrees at the University of Michigan, and then he decided to start working at the University of Berkeley, and it was at the age of 25, and he was one of the youngest professors. As his students remember, he wasn't very likable for them, as long as he was just too cold, and it seemed like he didn't have any communication with students, and it was hard for them to study when he had his lectures. He was deaf to their questions and didn't help them to understand complex topics. In 1968, Ted suddenly decided to retire without any reasons. That was pretty weird to his colleagues, and Ted came home to his parents. It upset his parents as long as they had concerns for his brilliant future at the university, and they just didn't understand why he came back home and closed in his room. Ted decided to switch careers and started his journalist career. However, it wasn't very successful. Ted was writing satirical novels and different essays on dystopian future in science, and his style was pretty heavy. When he was sending his articles and his works to different journals, they didn't accept it, so it basically didn't work out for Ted. Ted's asociality reached the critical level, and he, along with his brother David, went to Montana and bought a cabin in Great Falls. There, Ted spent a quarter of a century. He was hunting, growing vegetables. He was still communicating with people. For example, it is stated that he communicated with a librarian and his son. He helped his son with his bicycle. And among the neighbors, he was known as a friendly person, but quite untidy. In 1978, Ted sent his first bomb and was doing so for 17 years. Let's move to the victims of Ted, so you may have a picture why he was choosing these victims. Percy Wood was the president of United Airlines and was first hardly injured by the bomb that Ted sent him. The second victim was Hugh Stratton, and he was actually attending Ted's course at the university, his lectures, and he was a computer shop owner. Ted sent him a parcel with the bomb, and he died. In 1994 and 1995, there were two more victims: Thomas J. Moser, who was public relations executive, and California Timber Lobbying Associative President Gilbert Murray. At the same time, bomb that was actually for Murray was for another person, William Dennison, who at that time retired, so he didn't receive the parcel. However, most often victims of Unabomber were scientists. In 1982, Diogenes Angelakos, I think I can mess up the name, so sorry for this. He was 59 years old and he was a professor at the University of Berkeley. He received the bomb as well. That same year, Unabomber sent a parcel to Vanderbilt University to the head of computer science department, Patrick Fisher, but he wasn't at his place then, and his secretary received the bomb. Her name was Janet Smith, and she was injured by the time parcel exploded. In 1993, Charles Epstein became the next victim of Unabomber. He was as well a computer science professor. Definitely Ted had something against the tech professors. All of the victims had different works on how the technology has influence on people, and were just dealing with technologies, which was the thing that Ted didn't like that much. But not only Ted has something against tech professors, he also chose a humanitarian, James McConnell, who was a professor at the Michigan State University in the field of psychology. At the moment of the explosion, McConnell was with his student, and they were both highly injured when the bomb exploded. Some of the Unabomber victims died, but mostly some of them were highly injured. And when there was an investigation on McConnell's accident, his colleagues suggested an idea that it was a competitor who decided to get rid of McConnell by sending him a bomb, but they were far away from the truth. So now let's move to the psychological side of the case, which actually plays a huge role. The mysterious terrorist didn't like people working with technology, computers, biologists, people who were working with genetics. He also didn't like psychologists working with humans' behavior, airline executives, for some reason even PR directors, and at the first glance, it's just a group of people who aren't related to one another. Everything cleared up in September of 1995, when the editorial office of New York Times and the Washington Post received a letter from the anonymous terrorist, where he asked to publish his work, his manifesto, Industrial Society and Its Future, and if they won't do that, there will be more destructive explosions. His requirements has been met, and they looked at the manifesto. The essence of the manifesto said that technology ruins human lives. The Industrial Revolution is a disaster to mankind, and it affects humans' mental condition, their health. It turns them the products of engineering industry. Unlike people of primitive communal system, the research shows that the person in traditional system is more dependent than in an industrial system. So definitely the police just understood the motives of the Unabomber. He wanted to exclude technologies from humans' lives. But as a result, mystery opens up, and it was the same for Ted. He was writing letters for his brother David from the cabin for many years, and David at this time was married, and his wife, Linda Patrick, saw the letters, and she had different suspicions. She thought that the author of the letters wasn't mentally stable and had psychological problems, and she decided to show letters to the specialist, who agreed on her theory that the person had different issues. Linda at that time knew about the Unabomber, and she told about it to David, but he doubted that. In 1995, at that time Unabomber already killed 3 people, David opened the newspaper one day, and manifesto was already published at the time as well, and David was really surprised to see the arguments and metaphors and just different sentences that reminded him of one person. And as you may understand, this person was Ted. David had self-doubts about talking to the police as long as that was his brother, but in the end he decided to open up the mystery. But police and David agreed that no one will ever know who was the rat and who just leaked the information. But, you know, a funny thing, the next day the information was already known that it was David who told about Ted. Different specialists agreed on the suspicions that Unabomber and Ted were the same person. They had the same beliefs, the same grammar, and so on and so on. In 1996, Theodore Kaczynski was arrested and charged with murder. Also, he was charged with the transportation of bombs and of making bombs. He refused to state his mental health and his mental condition as long as he didn't want to communicate with the experts and with the police. He thought that they were agents of the system that he hated so much. But in the end, experts all came up to the fact that Theodore had paranoid schizophrenia, but the confusing factor for experts was that Ted didn't have clear symptoms of schizophrenia, such as he didn't have hallucinations, confused thinking, speech disorders. Also, one of the symptoms of schizophrenia is cutting all the communication ties. But as I've said earlier, Ted was friendly to his neighbors, he was a friend of the librarian, and he was talking to his brother David. Experts came up to the idea that Ted was just concentrating on the idea and following it, and this idea just was all his life. You know, when the person is crazy about something so much that he stops thinking about something else and he just concentrating on it and can do everything to reach his goal. Mental death could actually save the Unabomber from the death penalty, but Ted was refusing to check his mental condition, and when he understood that his lawyers tried to prove that he was insane and he didn't understand what he was doing, he fired them. He asked the judge to hire a new lawyer for him or that he would defend himself, but the judge refused to do it. Unabomber even tried to hang himself in the pre-detention cell, but he failed the attempt and he still remains at prison. In prison, he still continues to write, and he has done multiple works and even tries to get the newspapers to post it. So that's the story about Unabomber, and as always, I would like to know your opinions down below in the comment section. I personally think that he's definitely dealing with mental issues, but you know, their opinion that he's just following his crazy idea also has a place, and you know, just the persistence with which he's following his goal, you know, his attempts, they cost multiple lives, and now he's still writing his works in attempt to prove his point of view. He definitely has this crazy idea. Also, I would like you to suggest another video ideas that you want me to make, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys!